on in, isn't it?
I've hit it now. Record pending. Hold up. Yep, it started now.
Lovely. Okay, so some of you know me and some of you are just meeting me, and given present conditions where we're not face to face, I thought just a little bit of background about myself may be helpful. So I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. I've been working in product development related companies and I spent a decade in Southeast Asia, based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And then just as the pandemic was taking hold, I bolted with my family to Auckland. So I'm situated in Onehunga. So that's me. And a few of the companies that I've been associated, and look, there's not a full list because I'm getting old, but some of the notable ones which have some, where I was in roles where I was contributing to or responsible for the data strategy include Hitwise, Seek, where I was the Chief Technology Officer / Chief Information Officer for the Seek Asia businesses. Experian, where who acquired Hitwise, and where I had a leadership role amongst their consumer insights businesses. I also spent some time with a local business in Malaysia called Prestarian, who I, with about 10 others, helped them successfully bid for Malaysia's immigration system tender, which was like a 15-year concession worth about 8 billion ringgit. And then most recently, I'm Chief Product and Technology Officer for Weirdly, who I'm sure many of you locally are familiar with. If you're not, so Weirdly started in the assessment space and has expanded their product to focus on high volume retail recruitment. And we serve customers like Kmart and Target, and even companies like Atlassian and various other brands. And so, yeah, that's where I've been for just under a year. So I was chatting with Akash in the lead up to the meetup, and we were talking about what topics were coming onto the radar for data science teams, and OKRs and other types of goal setting was one thing that sort of came up over and over again. So I'll be interested to hear from the audience your experience in this place as well. And so I thought it would be helpful to share a bit about what I know about goal setting and OKRs and how I've used it in businesses I've been involved in, but also share some of the experiences in the sort of data strategy and data science experience that I've had, and some of what I saw when we didn't have such approaches in mind, and some of the challenges that I saw. Essentially, let's call them war stories. So agenda-wise, just for today, roughly work through these 3 topics. So let's talk a little bit about OKRs and goal setting, and where that might intersect or fit with data science. We'll dig into some of those war stories I mentioned, and then we'll loop back and see where OKRs can help, and also where they might hurt. I'm very happy for people to jump in at any point during the talk and ask questions. So I'm a interactive speaker. So yeah, jump in at any time, and very happy to take your questions as you think of them. And then also, if there's still time, we can do further Q&A at the end as well. All right, so as I mentioned, we've spotted this trend. So not just in data science, but in product development overall, the use of goal setting frameworks, the most notable approach being OKRs, has been growing. And then over the last decade, data science practices and use of big data has also been growing at just an unprecedented rate. I probably don't need to be telling all of you that. You're living in it and working within it. So this talk is focused on the intersection of these two things, and what are some of the things we can take away from that. All right, so let's jump into some war stories. I am going to try and adjust things to protect the innocent wherever possible, but I am going to be leveraging from my bank of experience across the brands I shared earlier. A classic challenge that probably the most common challenge I see with data science, with use of data science in large enterprise, is the construction of bridges to nowhere. Is everyone familiar with the concept of a bridge to nowhere? I see some nodding. Having lived in Southeast Asia, I got to see a number of these firsthand, and in China, I imagine that might be even more prevalent. But certainly in Malaysia, actual physical bridges that were constructed and spent, were connected to nothing for the entire 10 years I was there, was not an uncommon sight. I quite like this one that I've got here visually as well. That brilliant intent to just, all right, well, we'll dig the tunnel later. So I'm going to share an example from Seek. I'll adjust some details because some of this stuff is still live and happening. We certainly improved the situation. So one example at Seek was the collection of candidate data and an approach we were using, which was built around sort of question and response data. There was a fairly brilliant idea that when candidates are applying for jobs, they're highly motivated, they would answer questions about themselves as part of the process. That would be useful for employers immediately. They could use it for screening and those sorts of things, but it was also data that you could attach to a candidate profile, which you could use for filtering, but you could also use it for like AI matching and things like that. When I joined this project, it had been running for about 4 or 5 years already. A lot of the product had been adapted to enable that, employees provide, like setting up those questions, selecting from a question bank, and starting to collect that data from candidates. What was quite interesting though was this was a classic bridge to nowhere, because the thing that had got this project prioritized was the use of this data for AI matching, which was a thing that was not happening yet. And when you're 5 years in and you're still not doing the thing that the project's intent was for, then there's certainly a challenge. So I'm interested for those attending, does anyone have a bridge to nowhere that they've seen in their own work history that they want to share? Cool. No one? I might progress on then. I'll share a few more war stories. So, and I'm going to loop back to some of these and connect back to where we might use goal setting or other sort of planning techniques to address them a little bit later in the talk. So the other sort of common issue that I've witnessed across multiple brands that I worked at, notably Seek and also Experian for this particular example. This one I call bringing a bazooka to a knife fight. The actual image on screen, just for your own interest, is 850 horsepower Toyota Camry, which is like a drag racing V8 engine that's been loaded into it. So a pretty over-the-top type engine to put inside a consumer Camry, which was a car that apparently Jay Leno owns. So an example from my own work history. So often when you're a data science team and you're presented with a problem by the business, it's tempting to reach for your data science tools as the first option for solving those problems. We would often at Seek, specifically Seek Asia, we would often look at again candidate matching problems where we're matching, we're using different types of data to match candidates to relevant job offerings. And you might find that, oh, I've got these two variables, using the simplest ratio might actually give you results, which it might be very, very expensive to outperform with a more sophisticated technique. And so we would find that issue time and time again, which is like, without context, and you have, a particular tool that you're very good at, the temptation of just literally coming with that tool and trying to solve all problems with it. So walking into an additional type of problem. The other common problem that I've seen faced by teams is the challenge of where to start. So sometimes you're looking at problems which are very open-ended, where there's lots of potential, and you've got the question of like, where do I start on this problem? So an example of this would be at Seek, we would have many products, mostly about jobs and matching candidates to jobs across many markets. So for instance, Seek Asia alone was in 8 different markets, different audiences within those markets. And so it's one thing to say, hey, well, we're going to improve matching and we're going to connect people to more jobs. But it's another thing to go, well, we're going to do that, for like within our notifications product, within markets like Indonesia and Philippines, where there is where they're really candidate long markets. What we mean by that is there's more candidates, there's more people applying for jobs than there are jobs, by a very wide margin. And so this challenge, was often one that was could start at a data science team of like, hey, we're looking for you to leverage your expertise. What problems can you help us solve? But then, entering into this like very open-ended problem set and struggling on, what's the most impactful thing that we could tackle. It was also not uncommon to find teams focused around, optimizing metrics well beyond like, just continuing to just like, okay, well, now we can eke out another portion of a percent improvement, another one, well beyond the point of return on investment. So you could run into the problem of just like pure local optimization. I've got two more of these challenges that I'll share. Along a similar vein, the idea of incrementalism over impact. So it's very easy to get into the mode of, like, if we're focused on the how of doing things, to be, very wide in on going, okay, well, we could improve this metric by a proportion, and yet there was other much larger, much more impactful opportunities being left on the table. So, a common issue that for many teams that we had at Seek was we'd have success applying a technique to, which would have immediate improvement in an area, but diminishing returns on, as we continued in that same space. And so one of the things that we found was, if we were clearer on our goals and we could map out what the opportunities are in a visual way that teams could engage with, then they could make better choices as to where they would exert their energy. Well, one other common challenge, and again, all of these drawn from direct experience, and this may be the second most common issue amongst all of these, which was the challenge of teams pulling in different directions. So a very common scenario is data science teams are often downstream of other teams, like the teams responsible, like the feature teams responsible for adding features to the product front end, that sort of stuff. And by the challenge of being downstream is you're a victim of everything that happens upstream. So for an example, a front end team might change the way the data is collected, or they may change the way a feature works in a way that reduces the quality of the way that we're collecting data. And as I'm sure, all of you that are hands-on data scientists or working with hands-on data people, the everlasting topic is data quality, the challenge of data quality. And most data quality issues are avoidable ones, but they come about because of lack of alignment between the teams that might be, designing and evolving the product interface versus those teams that might be, developing the AI algorithms, etc. And so one thing we found that was relevant to goal setting was having commonly defined goals that each of those teams could be aware of, that they were incentivized to deliver on together, could address some of those issues, because all of a sudden it would be clear to the front end team what the downsides of reducing data quality would be. Does that make sense to people? I'm sure for anyone working in a multi-team environment, they've seen examples of that style of issue. The next one, so I think most of you are probably familiar with the concept of model drift, so I won't dwell on it too long. Just that, for enterprises where they had models out in production that had been out for an extended period of time, would start to see the challenges associated with model drift. Model drift is basically when models are based on the reality at the time, and so as the behavior of so at Seek it was candidates, at Experian and Hitwise, it was, consumers using the internet online, etc. As their behavior changes, what that might mean for the model might make the algorithm less effective over time. And normally in like very, very slow and subtle declines that, needed a decent amount of instrumentation to pick up and detect. And so one thing that I witnessed time and time again for teams, again at Seek and at Experian, was A, how to express that in a way that the senior leadership could understand, and B, sometimes the impacts of this was quite huge, and how could they communicate that in the clearest possible way. And there are some concepts within the sort of goal setting approaches that we've used or put in place at some of these businesses that did actually help them with that articulation. For those of you who may have been at one of my talks before, you may have seen this diagram. This is what I call, this is just such an ego thing. I've gone and named my own concept. It might not stick, but it's always worth a try. This is what I call the Walters lever of improvement, and really just looking at as a leader within, a senior leader within product development teams, where am I going to exert my energy, and where can I have the most impact? And so along the right-hand side, in my experience over 20 years, I've found that the clearer you are on the purpose of what we're trying to do as a business, the more people buy in, are aligned, actually do things that are towards that purpose, therefore broader impact. Providing leadership and context, and so what's the environment out there? What's the business environment like? What is our strategy? Why are we doing it? And then what are we trying to achieve? And how do we measure it? And then what are the activities that we're doing? I share this basic conceptual model because today's talk is very much focused on the what and the why, just to sort of put this thinking in its place. There's obviously other things that you can do that will also have impact, such as the things listed here, but for today we'll focus on mostly what and a little bit of why. One other thing, again, for those of you who may have been to one of my previous talks, but I think it's just an important context for you to know about how I think about product development. And I'll just give you a bit more context for the later slides. So I believe customers experience every aspect of your service, and therefore, because of that, we need to think holistically about our goals and about our business. And that might seem self-evident, but most businesses don't seem to work like that. So I feel like sometimes it's worth calling it out explicitly. And so lots of effort, within product development, lots of it is on the features and functionality, and almost inevitably the effort and level of investment, it's worse in some businesses, better in others. But in terms of the other aspects of how consumers or customers interact with your business, often get underinvested in. So that's useful context in terms of how I think about business and also goals. All right, so I shared a bunch of problems, and not wanting to be someone who just brings problems without some solutions. Let me talk a little bit about goal setting And when I say goal setting, I'm normally talking about OKRs, but there's other frameworks other than OKRs. So, but most of today's talk, I'll talk about OKRs and a little bit of some other things. So with some of these issues, there's other solutions, but OKRs might help. And if if you've got leaders that are bringing, the concept of OKRs into your data science team or your other data adjacent teams, then this may be the reason why. Of course, there are leaders who use OKRs for less good reasons as well. Sometimes they're used as a method of control when it's done badly. When it's done well, this approach to goal setting is much more about alignment and clarity of understanding between different groups of people. And so that's normally the flavor of OKRs that I prescribe to. There's also other frameworks that you may or may not have come across. One I really like is the PUMP framework. So it's you could really replace the use of OKRs with the PUMP framework. So if you haven't come across that, look up Stacey Barr. She's an Australian who developed a full-fledged approach to measurement in organizations. So that's worth checking out. But because OKRs have the popularity, let's talk about those. All right. When done properly, objectives, OKRs, which stands for objectives and key results. Objectives are outcomes and not activities. Objectives reflect a step change, not something super incremental. They're best when they're ambitious, in my experience, because it helps with creativity. They're accessible and easily understood, and they're not a measure or a target. So when I'm writing an objective, I'm normally going for a one-line, simple English that expresses what we're trying to achieve. And then I'm using key results to clarify that. So key results, when done well, tend to be a symptom or evidence that you're achieving the objective. Akash was mentioning to me the book Measure What Matters. It was a great book for raising the profile of OKRs. It was a terrible book if you're looking for good examples of OKRs, because most of the examples they have suffer from being very artificial, or are describing activities like build X, do Y, etc., rather than outcomes. And then the key results tend to be, a lot of the examples are like vanity measures, or not as tightly linked to achieving the outcome, the outcome as is useful. So key results, when you've got multiple key results, and then you tend to have 2 to 3 that help qualify what the objective is. They can be complementary to each other. So sometimes you might have a primary measure that you're using, but you also might have a secondary measure which represents, that you're not going in the wrong direction. Like an example is, like you often see OKRs used in sales, and you might have a key result which is like, close more deals, or something of that range. But the bad behavior might be, salespeople going around nicking leads from other people or something like that. So you might have a secondary key result that reflects that that is not happening. Ideally, key results are using leading indicators. So by leading, I mean not lagging. So things that change, like that are early indicators that you're maybe having success towards achieving your objective, rather than lagging indicators. So for instance, change in revenue might be a lagging indicator because it takes a while for, new leads and new business to roll through the business, and so revenue might be the last thing that changes. But the fact that your sales teams are making more calls might be a leading indicator that you're on the right track. And just to really double down on it, your key results should not be activities. There are some exceptions, things that I call process goals that, if you're really interested in that, you can always grab some time with me after this and pick my brains on process goals. But the thing I'd highlight is you'd only use these if you really understand causality. That is the chain of logic that suggests that those activities would actually, definitely influence you achieving your outcome. Cool. I'm pretty sure in this one slide I've covered more detail than you get in Measure What Matters. Maybe not, but this is one that I continue to distill over the last few years of using OKRs with teams. I think I've repeated some of this. Sorry, I nicked slides from another presentation, so I may have repeated myself. Let me just call out the things that may be a little bit different. Yeah, I mentioned before that OKRs aid in alignment. Well, one way it does this, if you think about, if you've got an objective, so let's say, we want to improve how well we, retain customers. Then the key results might be the relevant measures to that. And with 2 to 3 key results defined, 2 or 3, often numerical, but could be qualitative ways to measure that you're successfully achieving the objective, then it's almost like having, up to 3 points of agreement that show that you and another person are talking about the same thing. And so that concept is really why I love OKRs, because, it's very easy to write a sentence which is full of weasel words and, quite wishy-washy, and, 3 people, read it and all interpret it in different ways. But once you start to have, key results which actually map out, 2 to 3 different points of agreement, then it's very hard to be not on the same page with those people, because you actually have to work through those details. So that's where OKRs can be really great on alignment. Well, I know there's a lot of theory. I'll pull it back to the data science examples in a second. So I mentioned the concept of OKRs. There was a second tool, and I'll show some visuals just so you can, in a moment, just so you can see an example that we use, which is almost like chains of OKRs or chains of goals. And we found the 2 of these approaches used in unison was really helpful for product development teams, and also really, really helpful for teams involved with data science. The reason result maps we believe were this useful is because by showing the connections between different goals, you're not just describing what you want to achieve, but you're also describing the logic behind it, like the why you want to achieve it. And I found in at least the companies I've worked within, and also the ones that I've consulted to in the past, or have had colleagues work at, a lot of the time the why we're doing things is absent. And even when you agree on what you're doing, but you disagree on why you're doing it, it's very easy to be pulling in different directions. But if you're aligned on why you're doing something, what you're doing, and how you're going to approach it, then you can be very aligned. And yeah, sure, you can still go off track, but the chances have been reduced significantly. So the way we'd approach result mapping, and let me show you a visual. We'd often started off in sort of a brainstorming format, and then as you went over a few iterations, this one is taken out of the pump framework, which uses a very similar concept, and we were taking the name results map. And so if you look at this diagram, and let's start with the pink circle in the center. It starts off with very high level goals that may be true about your area of the business or true about the overall business, and you want to be true over a long period of time. The green goals that may be about describe your current strategy, and then as you move out further concentric circles, it's getting closer and closer to the goals that are connecting to the teams. In the businesses I've been working at, we were in the hundreds of engineers. At Seek, we had about 800 software engineers and about 150 data scientists, in addition to then many more other supporting roles. And so, ensuring that not individuals are on the same page, but teams are on the same page, they could support each other, was really an important requirement for our business. And so we leveraged result maps as just one of the communication tools, and initially could be brainstorming tools to get people on the same page. And then is this example, you don't try and tackle all of these things, as they would say in OKRs. Up to 3 objectives for any given quarter is normally the guidance, and for each of those objectives, up to 3 key results, is normally beyond that, and you're starting to lose focus. And so you would look at your result map and you might pick, okay, for this quarter, out of these things we want to do to achieve these high level outcomes for our business, we've decided that these areas which we've marked with the bold outlines might be the areas we're focusing in, where we think will have the most impact. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm jam-packing in a whole bunch of concepts all in one.
Just on that, Daniel,
okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
Is that like another way of looking at the cascading down of OKRs in an organization? Like, are those the objectives part of that, or how does that relate to OKRs?
Yeah, I love this question. There is an awesome article by Felipe Castro about if you've got multiple goals within an organization, the temptation can be to try and cascade them. In the worst examples I've seen, and the example that's in Measure What Matters, they'll have like, an outcome at one level of the organization, and then like the key results get inherited at the next level down, and that's a disaster for anyone who's tried it. The Felipe Castro's article talks about aligning goals over time. So that would be if you've published out your team's goal and you're being you're doing that in a public way, as there is connection in other teams, they might view that and adjust their goals accordingly immediately, or their context might be they've got stuff to finish and then they adjust over time. So the headline of his article is that they align, they don't cascade. And I found that result maps, just to bring back to your question, I found that result maps can really help with that clarity. So you can think of every circle, it's not a circle, is it? It's an oval. Every oval on this page is could describe an outcome, and for each of these you could define what Pump would call measures, or what OKRs would call key results, to help clarify what achieving that goal would be. But the thing that we found really powerful, this map looks really complicated, but if you took a single chain from here and went, okay, we're looking for world-class performance, and we, one of the steps to achieving that is we achieve the optimal balance of risk and investment. And to do that, we need to optimize our assets. And to do that, we need to achieve our operational maintenance and plans and budgets. So I just picked, a particular single chain through there. Then all of a sudden you've got a bit of logic that you can actually interrogate as a team and start to go, what across here, which would be our best intervention points? You might do a opportunity solution tree or something like that off one of those, and then end up with a set of options where you go, okay, well, if we do that, maybe we'll get some immediate impact. If we do the second option, maybe we'll get slower impact, but overall we get a higher impact over 2 quarters. You can have that sort of, and address some of that potential for incrementalism that I mentioned in one of the earlier slides. Cool. Thank you for that question. Loved it. I'll dig up that link and share it with Akash so that we can share that afterwards. Akash, how am I doing for time? I forgot to turn my timer on.
You've got 13 minutes, Dan.
Lovely. Just enough time to land this airplane. I think I probably spent enough time on result maps. I'll share around my slides as well. So there's a bit of extra stuff you can use for reference in terms of using result maps. All right, so let's talk about how did you go from a bridge to nowhere and to a bridge to a destination. So I should have double checked. I'm presuming this is the Golden Gate Bridge. I know there's a very similar bridge nearby, but it goes from destination A to destination B, so it's far more functional as a bridge than the one I showed earlier. So with the example I shared earlier, we had the team within Seek that was building. I shouldn't mention the product name, but I will. It was building the role requirements feature. You can probably see this feature in action when you apply for a job and up to 5 questions get asked of you and you fill that out. And so what we did with that team was we're going like, hey, we've been on this journey, we've been collecting all this data, but it's not been used yet for the purpose it's intended for. And so then when I joined that team, I was like, okay, well, we probably need to see if we can correct that. And the first thing we did was actually like a brainstorming workshop, and we built a result map. And so, part of what we're doing there was we're defining goals. We're having conversations about what we want to achieve, not just immediately, but, actually where we're heading, like that concept of starting with the end in mind, and then asking ourselves, by looking at the map, what needs to be true for us to get to this, to this overall end destination that we've been describing. In this case, it was, could we use this data that we're collecting for building models that actually enable us to match candidates to jobs much better than we were before? By having these much more granular structured data, structured data points, which described the jobs that they're applying to, and also the attributes of the candidates that were applying for those jobs. And what we saw from the result map, and I wish I could share that result map, but I can't for commercial and confidence reasons. What we saw was, okay, well, it was clear that we should be testing that data in models immediately. It was also clear that we needed to provide some better reliability around the methods for collecting the data. Like we couldn't afford to have a low quality of data, and so this sort of workshop and visualization changed the team's thinking about what we're going to do in what sequence, and what we immediately found was the data was in a terrible format for use in models. So we had to rebuild the data collection piece that had been in place for 5 years and collecting data in a format that was not that usable. Then we hit the second challenge. So we solved that. We hit the second challenge because we started engaging with the teams that would actually need to be using that data. And those teams are going, well, we actually believe that we could use a bag of words approach to solve this problem just as effectively. And that didn't turn out to be true, but it was interesting that was another friction point that needed to be addressed, and it was one that we could have tackled in year one, and without this sort of more holistic approach to thinking about it, we were picking this up in year 5. So I've just felt that was always, just a great example of can improve your decision making around that. I mentioned before about having the relationships between goals that are they can be of goals around different time horizons, and when you're looking at the connections between those points, working out as a team where based on the skills you got available and the assets you got available, where could you have the biggest impact by focusing on. And it's quite common for teams just to start with the first problem that they can see in front of us. And to be honest, many times that's just as reasonable place to start. But sometimes it's actually better to look at, well, what are the range of opportunities in front of you, and then select the problem to solve, and then progress that way. And so I liken it, I just think of those, again, maybe this is my time in Malaysia showing, but the different sort of medicinal massage that was available in Malaysia, where you'd have these massive pressure point maps. Well, you could use result maps sort of like that to know exactly what pressure to apply in certain places to get the maximum impact. So we also use result maps to when things are quite technical and complicated. A common barrier to getting alignment between senior leadership in large companies and teams working in a very technical space is just how to articulate why something is important. And to be honest, often team members find themselves in a situation where they're just literally talking a different language to their senior leadership. And so one way that we found that was effective for bridging that was we would take just a simplified chain that we'd identified, so it's linkages between a variety of goals that we'd taken out of a result map. So get rid of all the other goals, just the linkages relating to the area that where you had the issue. In this case, it might be the effect that model drift might have been having, on slowly degrading results within a part of our product, as an example, and then the range of interventions that we could be taking to improve the situation. And something about that sort of having the logic presented visually and simply help sort of bridge that gap, which just verbal approaches we're not bridging. Cool. I'm just showing some handy templates that we used. I talked about OKRs and the importance of them being outcome focused. One little trick we used was what we call the OKR format. So in addition to objectives and key results, we explicitly call out the activities. Why that's useful is people can be very tempted to whack the activities under the objective or the key result. But then you can always say, hang on, the activities are supposed to be here in the possible activities box. So you can go and put those there. Now tell us, let's have a conversation about what the objective and the key result would be. So that's an approach that we used, and it's also, I've seen it adopted by quite a few of the better OKR consultants that are in Australia and New Zealand as well. And I'm happy to connect you with people if you want access to a good consultant too. And then this was just a little template that we used for those, what we call causal chains. So where you just take a set of linkages for just like one set of goals. It's also a useful technique. If someone's starting with the activity, you can use this template to work backwards. So you go, okay, you reckon we should build we should build this widget, or we should do this algorithm. Let's talk about why we want to do that. And you can almost do like a 5 whys working backwards as to what actual problem they're trying to solve. Cool. I have run out of slides. I have more in the appendix, which when we share the pack around, I think you'll find some useful references in there. I'm happy to open up to the floor to talk a bit more about the intersection of OKRs and data science and working in sort of multi-team environments. Hope you find it. Hope you find this helpful. I know that if OKRs have just sprung up on your radar and you're like, what the hell is this? And what's this new, language or lexicon that people are using, and why are they introducing it? Hopefully it's provided a little bit of context to that, and given you some ideas on how you could use that to your to the advantage of your team. Cheers. Thank you. Let's open up the questions.
So yeah, collab for Dan. That was really good because it sort of gave me context where vision fits and where OKRs fit, because it's sort of a blurry line whether an OKR is a vision or a mission, or if it's something that's totally separated. But one question for you is just for data science teams. Is there any tools, online software or conversion of Jira or ADO or something like that, where we could sort of map everything end to end, the OKRs, the objectives, and the tasks?
Yeah, great question. Hey, can I stop sharing? I'm going to try that. There we go. Just so I can see more faces. So my recommendation is generally don't start with tools. So the reason for that is teams get lost in the setting up of the tool and don't grok the importance of writing and agreeing upon a good objective and those sorts of things. So we normally start at pretty lo-fi. That being said, a tool like Miro is very bloody helpful, particularly in a world where we're all working remote. So I might make an exception for Miro. If you get to a point where you've got a problem that you need a tool to solve, which, even I was managing this with about 20 teams in Seek Asia, and we didn't really, beyond posting objectives and key results into a wiki, there wasn't really much additional tooling that we needed to put in place. But I could certainly appreciate if you get into even larger and larger environments, tooling might be sensible at some point. But I certainly wouldn't start it, and I would hold out as long as possible. Other things I've seen useful on the tools point of view is sometimes you'd use a spreadsheet because it's just a handy way to capture a bunch of objectives and key results. But again, just trying to keep nice and lo-fi, try have it just down to the, people writing objectives, people writing key results, and actually interrogating them. What do you mean by this key result? Have you thought that this measure might be a better leading indicator than that one? That's where you get your alignment from. It's from the conversations around the goals. Does that answer your question, Akash?
It does. Thank you. So focus on the content versus focus on the tool, basically.
Yeah.
And the collaboration. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Open to questions from the team.
You mentioned opportunity trees, Daniel, one of my favorite things in the world. How do you link them or relate them or contrast them to the Okra framework? Do they kind of play nicely together, or are they alternatives? Or
there's a lot of, it's getting quite a busy space in all the different mapping approaches, and one thing I've been doing in my spare time is trying to reconcile the different techniques. I have personally found a lot of the theory of constraints type stuff really useful, and so they have a variety of tree concepts. The Teresa Torres opportunity solution trees, there's some really interesting stuff which is closer to the it's sort of a connector between what you want to achieve and your options of achieving that, and so it's almost like a connector to from the what to the how. So I would almost think of in a result map, it's almost like the outer rings and the items in there. You could probably use them together. For a result map, I literally think of every oval as being a potential objective. It's just an objective at a different time scale. So some of these objectives might make more sense as being, hey, this is what we want to achieve this financial year, or this is what we want to achieve in our 5-year plan. But I just find it really helpful because, hey, we've got this big, ambitious goal that we want to achieve over 5 years. Well, what needs to be true in 1 year's time? What would actually represent meaningful progress towards that? A way, I don't love Elon Musk, but a way that has connected and people thinking about this is well, he talks about this, big scary objective about life on Mars, and whether you believe that he's actually, whether this is just a great story or not, or whether he's actually trying to pull the pieces together for that, then you have well, what needs to be true for us to have life on Mars? Well, we're going to need to dig dwellings underground. We're going to need to have solar power. We're going to need to have rockets. We're going to, and so you see these sort of interim goals, which are also still big and scary goals, and then they break that into, well, we need this sort of jet fuel that burns at this temperature to be able to power this rocket to reach escape velocity. And so you can start to, that's sort of you could use that as an example chain of how does the smallest thing within one of those businesses link to a medium-term objective, which might be to get to outer space, which might link to a long-term objective, which is to actually dwell on Mars. So, sorry for mentioning Elon Musk. He's a very conflicting character, but it's a good example.
Any other questions?
The conflicting characters are the interesting ones.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's why I can't completely block him out. Still tempted to own a Tesla too. I'm just like,
I can't comprehend what 800 programmers are working on.
At Seek.
Correct, yeah.
So, and that's just Seek's Asia Pacific businesses. So there are a lot of products and there are a lot of functionality. I mean, you're right. The core of what Seek does is pretty straightforward. Like, people post jobs online and other people browse them and occasionally apply to them. You've got, mobile experiences, analytics for advertisers. You've got, ever improving ways for matching people to the right jobs, effort and reducing the amount of time between when an opportunity, is put there by an advertiser and it reaches the right person, the right potential candidate. You've got all the notification systems, so just lots of different ways to push out notifications to get people into the mobile apps, to get people into the onto the site. So yeah, it all adds up. There's also a lot of like Seek has about 20, or maybe it's probably about 30 now, startups. Some were startup internally to Seek, some but run as standalone businesses. Some were acquired, a lot were acquired. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. A lot of it's not or hasn't up until recently been branded as Seek. So it's a bigger business than most people anticipate because a lot of things are sitting under their own brands as well. Yeah. And there's a bit of fat there too. Whilst I'm telling secrets.
Thank you, Daniel. Chris had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear up whether, this might be a misconception on my part, but yeah, just wanted to clarify that a lot of the examples that you gave seem to be qualitative objectives. And I wonder whether that is, that is the way you would structure them, or whether that's just because of the kind of examples that you're limited to what you can present in this format.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both. I mean, the quantitative measures is really what the majority of key results I would define. That said, some things are just are not well described by a quantitative measure. And so, I'm a big fan of qualitative research as well. On the objective front, I think the most important thing about the actual objective is that it's easily understood. It doesn't have any weasel words, which is a good one to look up, just like, words that don't mean anything. Like words like effective, if someone says, make something more effective, I defy someone to tell me what that actually means. Yeah, I focus the objective part on the most understandable element, and then key results also important to be easily understood, but yeah, they tend to be a metric or a measure. Yeah, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard to do these well, but I know from perseverance that there's a pretty amazing payoffs as well. But there's a lot of other things that you need true within your culture, beyond just this. So I presented hey, this is what you can achieve with OKRs and result maps, but you also need, you need a learning culture. You need, a culture that's bought into evidence-based decision making. The reality is most businesses are not. So A lot of businesses it's the highest paid opinion, rules. So there's a lot of other things that you need to be true. And some of my other talks that I've presented over the last 12 months cover that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in that, come to my next talk, wherever that will be.
Cool. So Daniel, we're 10 minutes over. Firstly, I want to say thank you for this chat. This was really, really good. Being a product manager, this makes sense, but also managing data teams, it also makes sense. So I'm going to sort of apply this into my day-to-day life. So again, really, really appreciate you taking your time off and sort of preaching the whole OKR system to us and result maps. If there's any questions from the guys, could they just reach out to you via LinkedIn or via?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Daniel Walters on LinkedIn. You'll know which one I am because I'll be the one at Weirdly. Or you can reach me at Wyoota, WIOOTA on Twitter, or wyoota@gmail.com if you want to email me. But yeah, love talking about these topics. So send me questions or invitations for virtual coffee chats. I'm up for it all.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan, for that. And again, really, really good chat. So with that, team, we'll wrap up. I will record this and post this on YouTube. So if you wanted to just review the content again, and I will send Daniel's pack and his actual contact details via the NZ Data Ops Meetup website. Okay, everyone, enjoy the pandemic lockdown, I guess. And yeah, have a good night. See you, everyone.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Daniel.
everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.